Everyone who starts a side hustle has got different goals and objectives, but if your goal of your side hustle is to earn more and work less, then this is a video for you, as I'm going to show you several specific examples of doctors that have used their side hustle to work less and earn more. And if you think that sounds like a scam, then you really need to watch this video and understand it, because we're talking about a vital component that any side hustle and any successful business really should have, and that is leverage. And towards the end of the video, I'm going to give you specific examples of doctors that have used this leverage to build really successful businesses. This is part 2 of our 3-part series on how to start a side hustle. So if you haven't seen part 1, where I broke down how to validate whether your side hustle idea is a good one, you might want to check that out, and I'll put the link in the comments below. But let's just get straight into this mystical thing called leverage. What is leverage? Leverage is basically a force multiplier, and famously it was described by Archimedes, who may or may not have said, "Give me a lever long enough and I can move the world." Now, Archimedes was a pretty smart chap, and what he'd worked out is a way for him to put in less effort but get more out using a lever. And if you are starting a side hustle, you need to think about using a lever or leverage so that you can eventually earn more and work less. But let's just break down why doctors and other professionals have such a big problem with leverage, because as a doctor, I have almost no leverage in my day job, and let's just show you why. Okay, remember that leverage is a force multiplier. If I go to work as a doctor and I do 1 hour, let's put my 1 hour of time block there, okay, I just get paid for 1 hour, okay? It is not possible for me to leverage my time as a doctor. I cannot consult with more than 1 patient simultaneously. I can't see 10 patients at the same time as a doctor. That would be leverage. I can't operate on 3 patients at the same time as a doctor. That would be leverage. But I cannot get leverage as a doctor. And this is a situation that lots of professionals find themselves in. And it is a bit of a problem. But the reason why I'm stressing it to you is the last thing that you want to do is start a side hustle with no leverage, because otherwise you're just going to have one job with no leverage, being a doctor, for example, where you work really long hours, and replace it with another job. You call it your side hustle, but in reality, it's just another job with ridiculously long hours. And the problem is that if you have no leverage, the only way to earn more money is to work more hours. And that is a big problem. Let's just take an example of leverage, which I'm going to show you in a minute. If I've got leverage, I do 1 hour of work, okay? Maybe I've written a book, okay? It took me 1 hour. Then I'm going to sell that book 4 times, okay? So I've put in 1 hour of time, but because what I've done has leverage, writing a book, for example, I've got 4 hours worth of work out. So if I just want to earn £1, okay, I could just do 15 minutes work. I'm working less and potentially earning more using leverage. So now you're interested in leverage, I'm going to break it down for you. And I think that Naval Ravikant, who is an American investor, the way that he breaks down leverage into 4 specific categories is really good. So I'm going to use those categories, but I'm going to give you specific examples of doctors that have used that leverage. So the first way that you can get leverage in any business is using people. So this is one of the most powerful forms of leverage, and probably the one that you're most familiar with. Essentially, you just employ other people to do the work for you, and instead of doing everything yourself, you're leveraging the skills and the time of those other people to amplify the work that you get out. So whether that's having an assistant or outsourcing tasks or building a massive team, they're all multiplying your efforts, and that can boost your income. And I think that most entrepreneurs understand the art of delegation, and they surround themselves with a really talented team that build up leverage. But I think for a side hustle, leveraging people is totally unsuitable and incredibly hard to do, and I'm going to show you why. Okay, so I'm going to give you some examples that you might be familiar with. Babylon is, or was, a massive company that tried to leverage people. They were trying to get GP consults online using doctors as leverage, so employing lots of doctors to do the work. And at one point, things were going pretty well, and they even managed to float on the American Stock Exchange at a valuation of £4.2 billion. But leveraging people is incredibly hard, and you might be aware that Babylon is no longer worth £4.2 billion. They're worth £0, and unfortunately, they've gone bust. So managing people in a large organization and leveraging people is really difficult, and I think it's really hard as a side hustle. On the flip side, one person who has seemingly managed to leverage people is Dr. Louise Newson, and this is a classic case for doctors. You might know Dr. Louise Newson is a menopause specialist, and there is only one of her. So she cannot consult, thousands of patients a day. It's just not possible. So what she did is she built out a menopause clinic where she employs lots of other staff, leveraging their time. And in that way, she has generated some leverage for herself, not as a side hustle, I wouldn't imagine. She's multiplied her own skills in the menopause across lots of other people, and things look to be going quite well. By the way, if you'd be interested in YouTube on how we analyze balance sheets to work out whether it's a good idea or not, just let me know in the comments. Maybe that's a bit too geeky. And if you're really keen and you've been following our podcast, you'll know that very soon we'll be able to see a profit and loss account thanks to the Economic Crime and Transparency Bill, which is currently making its way through the House of Lords. So that is going to be a really great way, if you're doing research on side hustles, to think, okay, who's making money doing their side hustle? And you're going to be able to see everything, because you need a little bit of skill to interpret the balance sheet. So that's leveraging people. Don't rate it myself. Leverage number 2, leveraging money for investing. Now, leveraging money for investing is a classic move in the wealth building playbook. You are basically borrowing money to make investments that have the potential for higher returns. A classic way that almost all of us probably are doing this is in real estate. You use a mortgage to buy a property, and you don't actually have the money to buy that property, but you loan the money from the bank. So you're leveraging the bank's money in the hope that you are going to build your own assets. Okay, so if you are going to invest, that is a form of leverage. You are taking your money, loaning it to someone else in the hope that they give you back more. Okay, now I think this is actually a great side hustle for doctors, and in part 3 we're going to break this down with Ed on the pros and cons. So we're going to talk about tax advantages, money now versus money later. So make sure you hit subscribe to catch up on the third part. But a famous example of a doctor that has used leverage and investing to make a lot of money is Michael Burry, made famous by the book and film The Big Short. But lots of people don't know that Michael Burry was actually a neurologist. It would be a neurologist, wouldn't he? Because they're pretty clever, let's be honest. Hi to all the neurologists watching. But he has basically leveraged his thing and is now worth $1.2 million. So he's leveraged capital and made a lot of money. The third way that you can get leverage is by media exposure. And this is something that's becoming easier and easier with the advent of YouTube, podcasts, and easier access to the media. Back in the day, if you wanted to get exposure in the media, you needed to get in the newspapers or go on television. Really hard. Right now, thanks to things like YouTube, anyone can get on TV, for better or for worse. In the age of information, leveraging media is a game changer. Whether you're an entrepreneur, a content creator like this, or freelancer, just getting your message out to a broader audience can dramatically leverage your success. And podcasts, social media, they all offer a massive advantage to leverage media. And let's just say an example of a doctor that has done this very successfully. So Dr. Ali Abdaal is trained as a doctor and became a YouTuber. So I think last year he said that he made $4.5 million last year for making videos on YouTube, which sounds very simple, but actually he's done it really smartly. He makes money from advertising, he sells courses so that other people can help to start YouTube, and that ended up making him $4.5 million last year. So he has leveraged his time very successfully. For 1 hour of his time making a video, he gets hundreds of thousands of hours of media exposure, which translates into $4.5 million apparently. The fourth way that you can leverage is using code, or more likely known as software. And if you think this sounds a bit tech savvy, it is, but leveraging code is one of my favorite forms of leverage. And it's just a prime example how automation can work in your favor. If you write code that can solve a problem and automate repetitive tasks or streamline the process, you can save a ton of time and effort for you, but also yourself. And if you think about software development, okay, they create a product once, which is hard, but then they sell that product to thousands of other people without the need for continuous manual effort. So you can leverage code by building a website, creating an app, simply automating workflows, but using code as leverage is a really powerful way to maximize your input. And the reason why I think this is really suitable as a side hustle is, let's say I start making physical products like mugs, for example, and I sell them on Etsy. Each mug costs me money to produce and time to make. Even worse, I have to pay for the raw materials up front. So if I get a massive order of mugs in, I've got to find a massive amount of money to buy the raw materials and then hope that I sell all that order. And I'm going to have to spend a long time doing it. So my cash flow is really poor. And cash flow might be a word that you're not familiar with, but it will be very familiar to you if you run a business. It's simply the money movement in or out of your company. And if I have to buy a lot of raw materials up front to make a physical product before I've even sold it, my cash flow is going to be really poor. Okay, let's contrast that to if I write some software, for example, an algorithm that matches the financial needs of doctors to the best specialist medical advisor for them. Don't know who could do that, but it sounds like a brilliant idea. There is zero marginal cost of replication. And that is another bit of jargon, but it's such an important one. By which I mean, if 1,000 of you watch this video and decide that Medix Money is definitely the best place for doctors to find a specialist advisor, I don't have to write 1,000 more pieces of software. The software that I've already written takes care of it. So there is zero marginal cost of replication. Contrast that to if I was selling my mugs on Etsy, and I'd have to somehow make 1,000 mugs, and an absolute nightmare. I'm not going to be making any mugs anytime soon, but I do like software as a form of leverage. But I think one of the biggest and under the radar examples of this is probably someone called Frank Hester. Frank Hester was married to a GP and noticed that the software that his GP wife was using was really clunky. So he decided to develop his own software called TPP, or more commonly known as System 1. Okay, so he's grown this System 1 product to become one of the dominant players in GP practices and hospitals. And according to the Sunday Times Rich List, he was worth £415 million last year. But there's also actual real life examples of this being done right now. So Jacob Hester from AccuRx also came on our podcast. You can check the video out on our channel. He is using code to make GPs' lives easier. And I'm imagining that he's doing a reasonable amount of leverage there. And also something called Health Tech One. So code as a side hustle, I think there's loads of problems that doctors have that could be solved by code. You, if you are a doctor, are probably in a reasonable position to solve it. To sum up, 4 powerful examples of leveraging people, money, media, and code to make more money and spend less time at work. The key here is to work out where you can apply the leverage in your side hustle. Next time, I'll be joined by Ed, where we will be breaking down specific ways for doctors to earn more money using side hustles. And we're going to talk about it in detail, the tax pros and cons, the cash flow pros and cons, the amount of leverage involved. So if you want to watch that, make sure you hit the subscribe button, the like button, and notification button, and I'll see you on the next video.